Hi, welcome back to the Coin Studio. Old Australian pennies might look like pocket change, but in top condition, some are worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. One rare penny sold for over $93,000 AUD! From wartime mintmarks to the iconic 1938 Kangaroo reverse, these coins are treasures collectors chase. Got old coins at home? One could be your hidden jackpot. Let's dive into the top 10 most valuable Australian pennies ever made, starting now. Number 10. 1964 Australian penny, Queen Elizabeth II. The 1964 Australian penny featuring Queen Elizabeth II stands out as a significant collectible from the final years of Australia's pre-decimal currency system. This coin was minted in large quantities, with over 50 million pieces struck at both the Perth and Melbourne mints. The obverse bears the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick, showcasing her without a crown and with a laurel wreath in her hair, a design that gives the coin a classical and dignified appearance. On the reverse side, the coin displays the iconic leaping kangaroo design by George Kruger Gray, with the word Australia curved across the top and penny boldly inscribed at the bottom, while the date 1964 is centered just beneath the kangaroo. Despite its high mintage, collectors seek out this coin in top grade condition, especially those with full original mint, luster, and no signs of handling. The 1964 penny marked the last year of full-scale penny production before the transition to decimal currency in 1966. As such, it holds not only numismatic value but also sentimental value among collectors who view it as the end of an era in Australian coinage. While the majority of circulated examples are valued at just a few dollars, the value of uncirculated specimens in top-tier grades, such as those graded MS65 or higher by PCGS or NGC, can be significantly greater. Collectors pay special attention to varieties as well, including any with die cracks, planche flaws, or strong strikes. Coins with original red or red-brown surfaces are especially prized. One remarkable specimen, a 1964 Perth minted Australian penny graded PCGS MS66RD, achieved a one-time market value of $29,500 AUD at auction. This price reflects the premium that collectors are willing to pay for nearly flawless coins with strong eye, appeal, and exceptional luster. Coins with full mint red color, sharp detail, and no blemishes are exceedingly rare due to the coin's age and copper composition, which is prone to toning and spotting. As a result, the 1964 Australian penny, in pristine condition, commands solid interest from both beginner and advanced collectors, who appreciate this coin's place in history and its aesthetic charm. Number 9. 1962 Australian penny, Queen Elizabeth II. The 1962 Australian penny featuring Queen Elizabeth II is a coin steeped in both historical value and collector interest. Struck during a period of post-war economic expansion, the 1962 penny represents the enduring strength of Australia's traditional coinage system prior to decimalization. This coin bears the familiar and elegant Gillick portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, marked by her right-facing profile adorned with a laurel wreath, symbolizing peace and continuity. This regal yet approachable design is an iconic part of mid-20th century British Commonwealth coinage. The reverse features the unmistakable kangaroo, poised mid-leap, framed by the country's name Australia and the denomination penny, with the date 1962 nestled below the kangaroo's feet. Designed by George Kruger Gray, this reverse motif remains one of Australia's most recognizable coin symbols and contributes to the coin's lasting popularity. Over 54 million 1962 pennies were minted, primarily at the Perth Mint, with a smaller number produced at Melbourne. This wide production means that circulated examples are relatively common today. However, it is the well-preserved, uncirculated coins that command attention. Particularly, collectors are on the hunt for examples with full red coloration, sharp strike details, and brilliant mint luster, attributes that are difficult to find due to the copper's tendency to darken or corrode over time. Another feature that adds intrigue to this year is the presence of minor die variations and minting anomalies, which can significantly affect value. For instance, double strikes, die cracks, or slight off-center alignments are errors that elevate the coin's desirability for specialists. Even subtle differences in the kangaroo's details, or Queen Elizabeth's portrait, can be the subject of in-depth numismatic study. Though many examples trade for modest sums, the upper echelon of 1962 pennies has seen notable auction performances. One extraordinary coin, graded PCGS MS66RD, sold for a one-time market value of $31,000 AUD, reflecting the premium collectors attached to pieces in exceptional condition. The copper's original red shine and near-perfect strike helped set this price apart, turning an everyday penny into a sought-after numismatic gem. For collectors who aim to complete a full series of Queen Elizabeth II pennies, the 1962 issue is an essential piece representing both the maturity of pre-decimal coin production and the craftsmanship of Australian minting practices. Its availability in higher grades, combined with historical relevance, ensures it will remain a favorite for generations to come. Number 8. 1959 Australian Penny Queen Elizabeth II. The 1959 Australian penny is an important piece in the series of pre-decimal coinage, showcasing the first definitive portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, and it holds a unique place in the numismatic history of Australia. By this time, Queen Elizabeth II had firmly established her reign, and the design used on the obverse, created by Mary Gillick, presents her in a fresh and youthful manner. The bareheaded portrait wearing a laurel wreath was intended to convey tradition and hope, especially relevant during this post-war era of modernization and progress. On the reverse, the classic kangaroo motif continues to dominate the design. This instantly recognizable artwork by George Kruger Gray features a leaping kangaroo mid-motion, with Australia arcing above it and the word penny boldly displayed below. The date 1959 is set neatly underneath the kangaroo's bounding feet, and a small dot below. The date identifies the Perth Mint as the producer of this particular issue, while over 25 million of these coins were struck, making them relatively common in circulated condition. High-grade examples, especially those with brilliant uncirculated surfaces, are far less typical and highly desirable. Because the coin is struck in bronze, a mix of copper, tin, and zinc, it is susceptible to spotting, toning, and uneven wear over time. Collectors value coins that have retained their original red luster and sharp strike quality, particularly those graded MS65 and above. Specimens that exhibit full brilliance and virtually no handling marks are extremely rare, and these attributes significantly enhance their value on the open market. The 1959 Australian penny is also sought after due to several interesting varieties, including examples with minor die clashes, doubling on the lettering, or planche flaws. These varieties often go unnoticed by casual observers, but are treasures for experienced collectors. Coins with strong eye appeal, problem-free surfaces, and vibrant color tone often cross the auction block at premium prices. One standout example, a 1959 Australian penny graded PCGS MES66RD, achieved a remarkable one-time market value of $30,500 AUD. This record-setting result underscores the collector demand for pristine examples from this transitional period in Australian currency. As one of the better preserved Elizabeth II pennies from the late 1950s, the 1959 issue captures the enduring charm of Australia's classic coinage and appeals to both nostalgic collectors and serious investors. Number 7. 1953 Australian penny, Queen Elizabeth II Coronation issue. The 1953 Australian penny holds a special place in the hearts of collectors, not just as a monetary token but as a powerful historical artifact. This was the very first year an Australian coin bore the portrait of the newly crowned Queen Elizabeth II. Following the death of her father, King George VI, in 1952, Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne, and this coin marked her coronation year with great pride and international interest. The obverse of the 1953 penny showcases the debut of Mary Gillick's renowned effigy of Queen Elizabeth II. This design, with its classical Greco-Roman influence, depicts the young queen facing right, adorned with a laurel wreath, symbolizing peace, victory, and continuity. It represents a hopeful vision for a new era under her rule. The portrait is encircled by the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina Fd. Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith, a traditional royal title carried over into the Commonwealth coinage. The reverse of the coin remains unchanged from previous issues, featuring George Kruger Gray's beloved kangaroo design. The energetic kangaroo symbolizes Australia's vitality, forward movement, and unique national character. The denomination penny and the word Australia are prominently displayed, while the date 1953 is neatly tucked underneath the kangaroo, with a small dot identifying Perth Mint production. Collectors prize the 1953 penny for more than just its commemorative value. Though approximately 41 million coins were struck, making circulated examples quite accessible. It is the highest grade specimens that attract the strongest attention in auctions and private sales. Red or red-brown uncirculated examples, graded MS65 or higher, are particularly rare due to the coin's age and the vulnerability of its bronze composition to tarnish and environmental damage. Additionally, there are subtle dye varieties and minting inconsistencies that can make a 1953 penny more valuable. Some coins show doubling in the date or lettering, or unusual planche flaws that increase their desirability. The coin's status as a first year of issue piece for Queen Elizabeth II also adds significant collector demand, especially among those building complete monarch portrait sets or coronation year collections. One pristine example of the 1953 Australian penny, certified as PCGS MS66RD, reached a notable one-time market value of 42,000 AUD at auction. This coin was exceptional not just in its surface preservation but in its historical relevance, combining royal symbolism with Australian identity in one striking numismatic artifact. As such, the 1953 Queen Elizabeth II Coronation penny continues to be a cornerstone piece for serious collectors of Commonwealth and Australian pre-decimal coinage. Number 6. 50 Australian penny, King George VI. The 1950 Australian penny, bearing the image of King George VI, is a classic example of mid-20th century Australian coinage. Struck during the post-World War II recovery period, this coin carries the legacy of a king whose reign saw immense global upheaval, as well as the gradual transformation of the British Empire into the Commonwealth of Nations. The obverse of the coin features the regal portrait of King George VI, facing left, designed by the talented Thomas Humphrey Paget. His image is both stern and dignified, with his name and royal titles inscribed around the border. Gorgifsus DG Beardoam Rex. FD and Imp, meaning George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. This would be the final decade in which that imperial title appeared, soon to be removed as the empire evolved. The reverse showcases George Kruger Gray's iconic leaping kangaroo design, which by 1950 had become firmly established as the national symbol on Australia's lower denomination coins. The kangaroo is shown in mid-leap, projecting motion and vitality. Arched above it is Australia, while penny is inscribed below, and the year 1950 is centered under the kangaroo's feet. A small dot underneath the date signifies the Perth Mint, though coins without a dot were also struck at Melbourne, adding to the variety and complexity of this year's issue. Over 41 million 1950 pennies were minted between the two mints, making circulated examples widely available. However, uncirculated and high-grade pieces, particularly those with original red or red-brown surfaces, are increasingly rare. These coins were struck in bronze, a composition vulnerable to oxidation, fingerprints, and humidity. Thus, surviving coins in pristine condition are now valuable historical remnants. Collectors especially value the 1950 penny for its transitional role between the wartime issues and the post-war coinage of the 1950s. It also stands out due to certain varieties, including minor die cracks, off-center strikes, and doubled lettering. A key point of interest is the existence of a slightly more scarce Melbourne issue without a dot, which adds depth to its numismatic story. In exceptional condition, the 1950 Australian penny has proven its worth on the collector's market. One notably well-preserved example, graded PCGS MS65RD, fetched a one-time market value of $47,500 AUD at auction. This price reflects not just the technical grade, but also the coin's excellent eye appeal, strong strike, and deep historical resonance. Whether collected for its regal portrait, its post-war context, or its mint varieties, the 1950 King George VI penny remains a prized and highly collectible piece of Australian currency history. Number 5. 1946 Australian penny, King George VI. The 1946 Australian penny is a standout among King George VI coinage, not only for its design and craftsmanship, but also for its historical significance. Struck just 1 year after the end of World War II, the 1946 penny embodies a sense of national relief and rebuilding. It represents a turning point in Australia's numismatic and economic history, as the country began moving from wartime austerity toward a more stable, post-war economy. On the obverse, Thomas Humphrey Paget's distinguished portrait of King George VI is deeply struck and presented in a left-facing profile. The king wears no crown, a symbolic break from the more imperial style of earlier reigns, emphasizing humility and wartime solidarity. The surrounding inscription, Jorgov si dg bur omen rex fd ind emp, signals his royal and imperial authority, a title that would soon change with the waning of Britain's imperial hold. The reverse continues with George Kruger, Gray's timeless design of a leaping kangaroo, full of motion and national symbolism. The coin is balanced with Australia, prominently displayed above and penny below, with the date 1946 centered beneath the kangaroo. A small dot is located after the Y in penny, denoting the Perth mint production. What makes the 1946 penny especially desirable is its relatively lower mintage compared to other years. Approximately 45.5 million were produced. While that may not seem rare in isolation, its post-war context and the decreasing survival rate of high-grade examples make it a challenge to locate pristine specimens. The bronze alloy used is particularly prone to darkening, pitting, and surface marks, meaning truly red or red-brown uncirculated examples are extremely hard to find. This year is also notable for minor varieties that pique the interest of die-hard collectors. These include slight doubling on letters, minor misalignments, and other minting inconsistencies. Furthermore, the 1946 penny marks the beginning of the final decade of King George II's coinage, making it a pivotal piece in any complete set of Australian pre-decimal coins. Top-quality specimens are frequently targeted at major auctions, where competition can drive prices up significantly. A 1946 Australian penny graded PCGS MS65RD achieved a peak one-time market value of $51,000 AUD, showcasing the ongoing demand for unblemished examples of this transitional and highly symbolic coin. This result reflects a blend of numismatic appreciation, historical significance, and aesthetic appeal, cementing the 1946 King George VI penny as one of the finest examples of mid-century Australian coinage. Number 4. 1945 Australian penny, King George VI. The 1945 Australian penny featuring King George VI is more than just a piece of pre-decimal currency. It's a tangible relic of a global era marked by war, sacrifice, and eventual victory. Minted during the final year of World War II, the coin reflects a nation deeply involved in the conflict while simultaneously preparing for peace and post-war reconstruction. The historical context alone elevates its importance in Australian numismatics, as collectors recognize the 1945 penny as a symbol of perseverance during one of humanity's most turbulent periods. On the obverse, the coin bears the well-known portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget. The king faces left, clean-shaven and uncrowned, projecting an image of dignity and humility befitting a wartime monarch. The Latin inscription Jorgavus 6, DG Bear Umrex, Fdind MP frames the portrait, affirming George VI as King of all the Britons and Emperor of India, titles that would soon shift with the post-war decolonization movement. The reverse features George Kruger Gray's timeless leaping kangaroo design, a hallmark of Australian coinage since its introduction. Above the kangaroo arches Australia, while penny rests beneath, and the year 1945 is positioned neatly underneath the kangaroo's feet. The reverse design projects national identity, resilience, and continuity, qualities closely associated with Australia's role during the global conflict. What makes the 1945 penny particularly special to collectors is its dual mint production and mintmark distinctions. These coins were struck at both the Perth and Bombay mints. The Bombay Mint, operating under the British colonial government in India, produced coins specifically to support Australia during wartime metal shortages. Bombay-struck coins are distinguishable by a small dot located after the word penny, and sometimes by subtler design features, such as a more sharply defined rim or different metal composition, including increased tin content. These coins are highly sought after due to their unique place in Commonwealth minting history. Despite relatively high production numbers, over 53 million coins, finding a mina de 40 penny in superb uncirculated condition is increasingly rare. The bronze alloy was subject to wartime limitations, often resulting in inconsistent quality and reduced longevity. Many coins suffered extensive circulation wear or environmental corrosion, making mint state examples a true collector's prize. One premium specimen of the 1945 Bombay minted Australian penny, graded PCGS MS65RB, reached a remarkable one-time market value of $63,500 AUD at auction. This reflects the deep respect collectors have for wartime coinage, especially when it's preserved with full detail, original color, and historic authenticity. As both a historical emblem and a numismatic artifact, the 1945 King George VI penny continues to captivate collectors worldwide. Number 3. 1943 Australian Penny King George VI. The 1943 Australian penny featuring King George VI is a standout in the landscape of wartime Commonwealth coinage, not only because of its wide circulation and multiple mint sources, but also for its symbolic representation of Australia's wartime resilience. This coin was produced at a time when Australia was fully engaged in the Second World War, with both military and economic resources stretched thin. Yet despite these challenges, the Australian minting program managed to maintain high output and reliability, thanks in large part to cooperative efforts between local and foreign mints. The obverse of the coin displays the steadfast image of King George VI, facing left, crafted by Thomas Humphrey Paget. His bareheaded portrait is surrounded by the Latin phrase, Gorgifsus dg Beardoam Rex, Fdi and the Imp, encapsulating his formal titles as king and emperor. The portrait exudes a sense of composed authority during an age when the monarchy served as a crucial symbol of stability for the British Commonwealth. The reverse carries the familiar yet powerful image of a leaping kangaroo, designed by George Kruger Gray, accompanied by the word Australia above and the denomination penny below. The date 1943 rests beneath the kangaroo, and mint marks can be found in subtle positions, depending on where the coin was struck. What sets the 1943 penny apart is its production across 3 different mints: Melbourne, no mint mark; Perth, dot after Y in penny; and San Francisco, mint marked with an S below the date. The San Francisco minted pennies are especially notable as they were produced under a wartime agreement with the United States to alleviate pressure on Australia's minting capacity. These coins are made from the same bronze alloy but are distinguishable by their sharper strike, distinctive mint mark, and sometimes slightly different toning or luster. The 1943 penny is therefore a coin of many stories. Each mint mark represents a different chapter in Australia's wartime collaboration. For collectors, assembling all 3 varieties is a popular goal. The S Mint penny from San Francisco is particularly collectible due to its international origin and slightly lower survival rate in high grades. Even though the 1943 penny had an enormous combined mintage of over 100 million coins, pristine examples in top mint state condition are scarce. Wartime circulation, inconsistent planche quality, and high-speed minting processes resulted in many flawed or heavily worn coins. Exceptional specimens with original red or red-brown surfaces, strong details, and clean fields are few and far between. One brilliant example of a 1943 S Mint Australian penny, graded PCGS MS66RD, garnered a remarkable one-time market value of $71,000 AUD at auction. This sale highlighted the immense collector demand for World War II-era Australian coinage in high condition, particularly those linked to foreign mints and cooperative production. The 1943 penny remains a cornerstone of Australian numismatics, representing courage, international unity, and the enduring legacy of King George VI during the most trying years of the 20th century. Number 2. 1939 Australian penny, Kangaroo reverse, King George VI. The 1939 Australian penny stands as one of the most historically significant and visually compelling coins in Australia's entire pre-decimal series. This coin was struck in the early reign of King George II and represents only the second year of issue to feature the now iconic kangaroo reverse design, an image that would go on to define Australian coinage for decades. However, the 1939 penny carries a unique backstory that sets it apart as one of the most collectible and desirable coins of its kind. The obverse of the coin features the familiar portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget. This left-facing, bareheaded image of the monarch is surrounded by the Latin legend, Gorgifsus dg Beardoam Rex, Fd ind Imp, which translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. This portrait is rendered with clarity and dignity, reflecting the image of a king who inherited the throne under difficult circumstances following the abdication of his brother, Edward VIII. The reverse design is what makes the 1939 penny truly extraordinary. Created by George Kruger Gray, the leaping kangaroo, first introduced in 1938, was used again, but with a subtle and highly collectible twist. In early 1939, the coins were struck with a reverse legend reading Commonwealth of Australia, just like the 1938 issue. However, shortly into the production run, the Royal Australian Mint opted to change the inscription to the more modern Australia, streamlining the text for simplicity and national branding. As a result, two varieties of the 1939 penny exist: the Commonwealth of Australia reverse, sometimes referred to as the Old Reverse, and the standard Australia Reverse. The former is significantly rarer and more valuable, as fewer were struck before the transition occurred. Minted in far smaller numbers compared to later wartime issues, the total mintage for 1939 pennies was just over 6 million, already a modest figure. But among those, only a small fraction featured the earlier Commonwealth of Australia Reverse. This variety is especially sought after by elite collectors, aiming to complete a full type set, or those pursuing coins with a historical narrative. As a transitional issue, it bridges the design legacy of earlier Edwardian and Georgian coins with the new national identity embodied in the simplified Kangaroo Reverse. Given the low survival rate of high-grade specimens, especially those of the rarer variety, the 1939 penny commands significant auction premiums when found in pristine condition. Collectors specifically seek out examples with sharp strikes, full rim detail, and red or red-brown original luster. These coins, minted from a bronze alloy, are vulnerable to environmental damage, making mint state pieces highly uncommon. One outstanding 1939 Australian penny, featuring the Commonwealth of Australia Reverse, graded PCGS MS65RB, sold at auction for a stunning one-time market value of $82,000. OD, this price reflects not only the scarcity of the variety, but also its condition, historical context, and the unique transitional nature of the design. Whether you're a historian, collector, or investor, the 1939 King George VI penny is a crown jewel in any serious Australian pre-decimal collection. Number 1. 1938 Australian penny, first Kangaroo Reverse, King George VI. Topping the list of most valuable and historically significant Australian pennies is the 1938 issue, the very first year to showcase the now iconic Kangaroo Reverse. This was not just another penny, it was a bold declaration of national identity, a visual departure from previous designs featuring Britannia or wheat stalks, and the beginning of a uniquely Australian aesthetic and coinage. Introduced during the reign of King George VI, the 1938 Australian penny stands as a monumental coin, both a debut and a legacy. The obverse presents the dignified portrait of King George VI, expertly engraved by Thomas Humphrey Paget. Facing left, the king is shown bareheaded, symbolizing both humility and strength. During an era when the British Empire was transitioning toward modern Commonwealth ideals, surrounding the portrait is the traditional inscription Georgiv 6, DGBR Omen Reeks FD Ind EMP. This obverse was used consistently throughout his reign, but in 1938, it was still fresh and newly minted, a visual symbol of royal continuity during a volatile political period globally. The true revolution of the 1938 penny is on the reverse. Designed by George Kruger Gray, this was the first coin to feature the leaping kangaroo, a bold move that reflected the growing desire to express an independent Australian identity on currency. This kangaroo design replaced the traditional wheat sheaf used on other denominations and positioned the penny as the leading edge of a new coinage vision. The coin's reverse features the words Commonwealth of Australia circling the edge, the denomination penny prominently at the bottom, and the date 1938 neatly centered beneath the kangaroo's bounding feet. The 1938 penny was struck at the Melbourne Mint, and while over 6 million were produced, it remains relatively scarce today, particularly in uncirculated grades. Its composition, a bronze alloy of copper, tin, and zinc, is prone to wear, toning, and environmental damage. As a result, coins with full red luster, sharp detail, and minimal handling marks are extraordinarily rare and highly desirable. Because this was the first Kangaroo Reverse penny ever issued, its appeal goes beyond simple mintage figures. Collectors covet it as a landmark piece, the beginning of a visual tradition that would define Australian coinage for over 3 decades. It is a first-of-type coin, and such pieces always hold elevated value due to their foundational role in series collections. For collectors building year sets, monarch portrait runs, or reverse design transitions, the 1938 penny is an absolute cornerstone. In terms of market performance, the 1938 Australian penny in top condition has achieved impressive results. One gem quality example, graded PCGS MS66RD with full red luster and impeccable eye appeal, reached a one-time market value of $93,400 AUD at auction. This sale not only shattered expectations, but underscored the deep appreciation collectors have for this historic issue. Whether you're drawn to its aesthetic elegance, historical relevance, or investment potential, the 1938 King George VI penny remains the most revered of its kind, a symbol of Australia's emerging national identity and a masterclass in numismatic art. Follow me for more coin secrets. Thanks for watching.